name's Waffles, and I'm a government whistleblower turned political commentator, and here are the top economic news highlights for the past 24 hours. Today is January 6, 2026. It is 11:15 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Today, the S&P, well, technically yesterday, if you're watching this, the S&P 500 closed up 0.62%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 0.99%. The Nasdaq up 0.65%. The Russell 2000 up 1.37%. The NYSE Composite up 0.6%. Stock X Europe 600 up 0.2%. DAX 40 Germany up 0.9%. FTSE United Kingdom up 1.18%. FTSE 250 not widely reported in major headlines. Typically moves in line with FTSE 100's domestic strength. Asia, Nikkei 225 Japan down 0.9%. Hang Seng HK down 1%. Kospi South Korea down 0.5%. MCSI Emerging Markets Index, no specific close percentage reported in major news today. Sentiment and risk factors, VIX CBOE Volatility Index down 1%. Lower fear gauge, U.S. dollar index DXY up 0.01%. U.S. 10-year Treasury yield, broad yields moved modestly higher today as markets weighed economic data specific percentage change pending full market release. The Russell 2000's solid gain signals small cap optimism and a constructive view on domestic economic strength. Europe's StockX 600 and DAX gains reflect continued broad risk appetite even amid global geopolitical tension. FTSE 100's strong performance shows UK equities outperforming alongside global rallies. Asian markets paused or pulled back overnight, often signaling cautious global sentiment after strong U.S. gains. U.S.-Venezuela oil deal signals trade and energy links. Venezuela is set to export about $2 billion worth of oil to the United States under a deal with Washington, representing a trade-related energy arrangement following the capture of Venezuelan President Maduro. This could help ease U.S. energy costs and impacts broader trade balances in petroleum products. This is a meaningful trade flow signal given the scale of U.S. petroleum consumption and the broader geopolitics of energy markets. And the new person in charge of Venezuela right now was hugging Xi Jinping and hanging out with Russia-aligned assholes. ISM manufacturing sector continues to contract at a low level. U.S. manufacturing activity slid to a 14-month low in December, extending contraction and showing weak demand, falling inventories, and continued job cuts in factories. Tariff pressures and elevated input costs remain cited as headwinds. Factory contraction is a leading indicator of weaker goods production and trade-linked activity, often preceding slower import demand. Richmond Fed official flags balanced risks to growth and inflation. Richmond Federal Reserve President Tom Barkin highlighted that the U.S. economy faces risks on both inflation and employment fronts, noting moderate labor market softness and inflation above the Fed's 2% target, complicating interest rate policy. Fed guidance influences market expectations, cost of capital, and investment, all critical to trade competitiveness and economic growth. U.S. financial markets show modest gains as rally continues. Wall Street continued its recent rally with modest gains in major indexes, the S&P 500, Nasdaq, and Dow, amid tech and healthcare strength and guidance that incoming jobs data will shape the Fed's next move. Investors are monitoring labor and inflation data for policy clues. Equity performance affects consumer and business sentiment with implications for corporate investment and trade dynamics. Job openings rose in January, layoffs declined. January's job openings and labor turnover survey, JOLTS, showed job openings increased to 7.74 million while layoffs declined. Economists note labor demand may soften as uncertainty around tariffs and fiscal policy affects business hiring decisions. Lagging versus leading signal, openings can signal future wage trends and consumer demand, integral to domestic economic resilience and spending. So, people are hanging in there, and we're coming up on the midterms. So if people vote and get the assholes out of Congress, we may be able to possibly save the sinking ship somehow that is our economy and stabilize trade. Federal Reserve official highlights dual risks to jobs and inflation. Richmond Fed President Tom Barkin said the U.S. economy faces simultaneous risks on employment and inflation, noting that unemployment has changed higher while inflation remains above the Fed's 2% target, complicating interest rate policy going forward and highlighting uncertainty in growth and labor markets. This underscores monetary policy ambiguity, which affects borrowing costs, consumer confidence, and trade flows, especially given inflation and labor dynamics. Wall Street continues broader rally into 2026, driven by tech and healthcare. Major U.S. equity indexes saw continued modest gains, with tech and healthcare stocks supporting the rally. While geopolitical events and oil market moves weighed on energy stocks, broad market strength suggests investors are pricing in continued economic resilience. Equity performance often reflects broader expectations for growth and corporate profitability, influencing capital flows and risk sentiment. Supreme Court to decide on legality of Trump-era tariffs. The U.S. Supreme Court scheduled to issue rulings in pivotal cases involving the legality of tariffs imposed during Trump's administration, with wide implications for domestic trade policy, international trade relations, and uncertainty in commercial planning. Pending court decisions on tariff authority can materially affect trade norms, compliance costs, and investor confidence. Global FX markets show risk on sentiment. U.S. dollar softens. Overnight currency trading showed the U.S. dollar trading modestly lower against major and commodity-linked currencies, reflecting reduced safe haven demand and increased risk of appetite. A signal that market participants may be betting on stronger growth and lower economic stress. Dollar movements influence export competitiveness, import costs, and trade balances, critical for interpreting broader U.S. economic momentum. AI and tech company gains driving sector leadership. Stocks tied to data storage and AI infrastructure, e.g. SanDisk and related names, saw outsized gains, demonstrating that technology investment themes are influencing broader market dynamics and expectations for future growth sectors. Sector-specific performance, especially in AI and tech, can be an early indicator of capital investment trends and innovation-driven economic momentum. PEER, P-E-E-R, it's an acronym, investigation into offshore wind national security halt. Donald Trump has been forcing his wind power installations that have been underway for a significant amount of time to suddenly halt their operations when they are nearing completion of the projects. And so now they're suing. Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility, PEER, officially launched an investigation on January 6th into the Department of the Interior's decision to pause 5 major offshore wind projects. The administration cited national security concerns for the freeze. PEER is seeking records to determine if classified assessments actually existed or if the security label was used to bypass standard environmental and administrative procedures to halt renewable energy expansion. Pentagon review of women in ground combat. The Pentagon has quietly initiated a formal review of the effectiveness of women in ground combat roles. This review, reported January 6, 2026, seeks to reassess high-achieving women in these roles. Critics and advocates for women in the military argue this exercise is designated to gather data to justify potentially restricting or rolling back the 2013 policy that opened all combat positions to women. Treasury order forced divestment of semiconductor assets. On January 5th, the White House and Treasury Department issued a rare aggressive order via the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, CFIUS. The order forces HIFO Corporation, a foreign-linked Delaware entity, to divest all interests in Mcgrawl Corporation's digital chips business. The move was prompted by non-notified transaction concerns regarding intellectual property and potential diversion of indium phosphide chips critical for high-speed communications and defense away from the U.S. Schedule career policy rollout. The Office of Personnel Management, OPM, is currently circulating final regulations for the schedule career/policy classification, a successor to the controversial Schedule F. This allows for the conversion of tens of thousands of career civil servants into at-will employees. Essentially, Donald Trump is trying to make it so he can fire whoever he wants at our federal agencies whenever he wants. Lists of targeted positions are currently being finalized at the agency level, with the administration citing accountability to the president as the primary legal justification. First Circuit clash over NIH research grant terminations. A major legal battle reached the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit today, January 6th, technically yesterday, regarding the mass cancellation of National Institutes of Health NIH grants. The administration abruptly terminated hundreds of research grants focused on disfavored topics such as health disparities and minority representation in science. Plaintiffs presented arguments that the terminations were arbitrary and capricious political acts that violated federal grant review laws, potentially setting a precedent for how much control a president has over scientific funding already awarded. Fixed date admissions for students and exchange visitors. A proposed Department of Homeland Security DHS rule is moving through the final stages to replace duration of status for F and J visa holders with fixed end dates. Currently, students can stay as long as they are in school. Under the new rule, they will be admitted for a maximum of 4 years and would have to file formal extensions with fees for any additional time. This creates a rigid system of deadlines that could result in accidental illegal status for thousands of international students if administrative processing delays occur. Termination of penny production. A minor but symbolic economic shift was confirmed in Treasury FAQs over the last 24 hours. The formal cessation of penny production, citing the rising cost of metals and production, which now far exceeds the 1 cent value. The U.S. Mint is winding down its 1 cent operations. This marks the first step towards potential price rounding in retail, costs going up. For that reason alone, I find this move questionable. To say that the penny should be outruled and everything rounded up to a nickel. This marks the first step towards potential price rounding in retail, a common practice in other nations that have retired low-denomination coins. Now is not the time. The economy is struggling. He's doing everything he can to just introduce instability. It's just absolutely insane. It just never fucking ends. Like, guess what? There's going to be a point in time with Donald Trump trying to do all these psychotic changes that we're all just going to be looking around and like nobody knows the fucking law, and then there's going to be somebody that's like telling you these are what the rules are, and you're not going to know the fucking rules because they're just changing everything, and they're changing the name of the facilities. So it is creating a situation that will make it so that Americans will not even be able to navigate their own governmental body, body that has been here through my entire life. I would assume most Americans their entire fucking life. So, yeah. It's just ridiculous out here. I don't know what to say. It's appalling. It is very sad that our mechanisms of government are not able to take action more expediently to prevent this abuse of power that we've been witnessing. I'm glad that the American people are hanging in there like, fuck this dude, and just kind of like going about life and trying to be mindful in how they're handling commerce, and also respectful and caring towards other Americans during this time. But this is a damn shame, and it's a clown show. It's absolutely ridiculous. Other than that, I don't like what's going on with this Venezuela shit, and I don't like that BRICS just got involved. Members of BRICS, like, that pisses me off. So Lev and Ben from the Midas Touch Network were talking earlier today in a video called Aftermath of Invasion. Yesterday in our reports, the lady that's taking over in Venezuela, she's gonna be in charge, and she's like getting sworn in or something today, and she was hanging out with the leader of China and Iran and a Russian, I believe. So, for more information, you can go look at that, but that's a huge red flag. These are BRICS nations. These are the nations I've been warning that I think are trying to engage in a coup in America and destroy the American economy, and I feel that Donald Trump is aiding and abetting a foreign adversary and deliberately attacking our economy. And if Russia is in that area, that is not a good thing. They like to come up through Texas. They like to come up that little land strait right there, so I don't like any positioning of Russians in the area. Piracy for oil and like, what kind of deals are being made behind closed doors here? The United States military is being mobilized for imperialism for BRICS nations. Not for the United States, but to aid BRICS, whom I'm pretty sure has made statements about destroying the United States economy. Like, do you allow the president to aid a foreign adversary? So, yeah, this ends today's economic report. I'm going to go now. Bye.
So the Olympics is great. And Johnny, for the others, the World Cup, Johnny is the head of it. We had our top people, Wasserman. They all came in on the Olympics, and then I saw Johnny. And we got the World Cup, too. And, it's only because they rigged the election that I'll be your president representing you there. I got both of them. I got the Olympics, and I got the World Cup. And I said, it's too bad. One was in 2026, and the other was in 2028. And I said, I won't be there. I won't be your president. But then they rigged the election, and now we won, so I'm going to be your president for the Olympics and for the World Cup. So, Johnny, thank you for the World Cup. And everybody, thank you for the Olympics. We're going to have a great time.
Hey guys, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment to my videos. And also, don't forget to check out my shop where you could get this awesome Real Patriots Punch Nazis t-shirt. America, fuck yeah! And if you go to the link tree in my bio on most platforms, it's got links to everything, all of my stuff. You can find my shop there. I'm on eBay. You can also get this cool Exterminate MAGA Sticker, because MAGA's fucking cockroaches. And fuck MAGA. Abolish MAGA. Fuck you, MAGA.